Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we have a very special guest. She is a pediatric physician and a midlife transformation coach for women. She is Dr. Sue McCreadie. How you doing today, Dr. Sue?
I'm great, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it is my pleasure. So the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Dr. Sue McCreadie?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm a mama. I'm in my midlife. I'm 53. I've been married for 23 years. And my first calling is really helping children heal naturally. So I'm a holistic pediatrician. I've always been an entrepreneur from the beginning. So after I finished med school and I was a chief resident for a year, I launched my own practice. And so I've been an entrepreneur for 23 plus years. And along that has been kind of many journeys in terms of figuring out how to serve women. My family jokes that they're not sure really what I do because I've done so many different things. But recently, these past handful of years, I've really landed on my second calling, which is supporting women, mainly in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, through the transition or transformation called midlife, which is, I think of kind of like the second adolescence, really. It's like, do you remember adolescence, Ryan?
Yeah, just a little bit. It was a while ago, but I kind of remember a little bit.
Yeah, like it's stretchy, it's uncomfy, there's hormonal changes happening, you kind of feel uncomfortable in your body, you're not really sure who you are, your identity, how you contribute to the world, right? You're probably navigating like your first close, intimate relationships with other people, right? So there's a lot of similarities in midlife because there are hormonal changes. Women often do feel kind of uncomfy in their bodies. New things that they've never had before are popping up, right? And also, there's a lot of transition in terms of relationships. Like um, their kids grow up, then they're like, wait, who are you? Right? Looking at their partner, or maybe the relationship didn't last, so they're looking at starting another relationship. Often there's careers winding down, maybe a passion project starting up, maybe figuring out a new way to serve in the world, figuring out who am I if I'm no longer like a mom who's needed, right? All of those type of things. So a lot of similarities I see between midlife and adolescence.
That's an interesting perspective you have there, like comparing the one with the other.
I think it's helpful for people who aren't in midlife, right? Ryan, I don't know. I don't think you're ever going to be a midlife woman in this iteration of Ryan.
Let's hope not.
But Ryan has definitely gone through adolescence, and so has, I would think, almost every listener listening right now has probably really gone through that. So it's just like a stretchy kind of transitional time. And that was a big thing that I learned from the get-go. I was thinking, oh, perimenopause, menopause, oh, that happens in a year. No, it's like a decade of your life. It's a long period of time, and it kind of has like a wind up phase, right, and a wind down phase. So it's a thing.
Hmm. So, what led you from going to working with children as a pediatrician to
Mhm.
more of a life coach for women? Like,
Yeah.
what was that
Well,
drastic change?
I've always loved personal development, right? And as an entrepreneur, I've done a lot of personal development. I think most entrepreneurs do. If you're going to stay in business, you're probably going to develop yourself since you're the son of the business. You're the everything in the beginning. And when I was working way back, when I started my practice 23 years ago, the moms would always say, "This is so awesome. Thank you so much for helping my child. Like, how can you help me? What can you do for me?" And I felt like it was a long time of me trying to figure out, well, I'd like to do this, but they're like, I don't want that. And they'd say, I want this. And I'm like, but I can't give you that. Right. So it's about really figuring out where, what I desire to serve, they really need. And I found that finally with coaching. However, before I found coaching, I had started and ended 4 other entrepreneurial businesses serving women. And in the process after the fourth one, I just kind of put it down. I was just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to retire this gig out as a pediatrician. I'm just not sure how to get this other piece to work. So I'm just going to put it down, lay it to rest, say bye-bye. And within like a few months, lo and behold, I like followed another breadcrumb, right? Which I really feel is like, that's how I moved from pediatrician, which I still am, to a life coach, which I am now. Is following breadcrumbs. And let me tell you, like sometimes the breadcrumbs are really scattered, looking like they're going in all different directions, right? But eventually they kind of like come back and make a loaf of bread somehow. They bring it all together. So that's how it evolved.
What types of services do you provide?
Well, yeah, for women, basically, I provide coaching. I have a membership community where I do group coaching monthly, and then I do one-on-one coaching, so individualized coaching with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And then I also blog every week. So that just sharing like my personal stories. That's where I share a lot about my journey through this thing called midlife. And also, highlight tools and personal development tools that I've learned along the way of, mindset flips and shifts and perspectives, those type of things.
Yeah. What would you say is probably the biggest challenges your clients face?
Change, which sounds like a big thing.
That's a
Change, but when you're dealing with life, change can be in anything, right? Like one of the clients I'm working on right now, her adult son, moved back home. And she's like, wait a minute, right? So it's like navigating, she's a single mom. So it's navigating the differences and boundaries, right? Like, she's no longer, he's no longer a child and he wants to be independent, but yet he's living in the family home, right? So those can be like navigating that. I've helped women, through infidelity, right? Infidelity within the marriage and figuring out, are they going to stay or are they going to leave? And if they're going to stay, how they're going to navigate, like, surrender and forgive and move forward, right? Helping women balance the stress of being a provider and working and also being the main shtick at home and doing all the things there provide like a lot of stress. So those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah. Why is coaching such an important step for midlife women?
Well, I don't know, Ryan. Thinking back to your adolescence, do you think it would have been helpful to have a guide, someone who would be like, Ryan, I totally get that. I hear you. It's common to feel that way, right? And give you some perspective on what's really like happening, right? Patterns. Like we always talk about in personal development. It's not you, it's just a pattern. And so I feel like a lot of it is just super supportive to women, especially to be seen and heard, held, right? Because often women are the nurturers. So they're always holding somebody else. Like who's holding them? Right? And
Yeah.
so, and just holding them in a space where they can be seen and heard and understood. And they're really looking to shift their perspective so they can get back to like a loving space, whether that's in a relationship or with a work related stress, or even with the health changes of just feeling, happy again in this body that's kind of doing wacky things.
Yeah. I can just imagine like the happiness part's probably a huge thing and just have someone to talk to help build them back up a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, and we do a lot of role playing because I feel like a lot of life is relationships. So we do a lot of role playing too, of like, okay, how about I play the other person or I play them, right? Of how they could navigate this conversation, right? With a person that they love or care about or want to really move through and heal. Yeah.
Yeah. How should someone find and choose their life coach?
Well, I don't know about you, Ryan, but how you have found your coaches and mentors. To me, a lot of it is just keeping an open ear, listening, and seeing who you resonate with. Like, who do you want to lean in and be like, huh, or how did she do that? Or, wow, that's amazing. He's up to that. Or someone who really you feel safe with, like you feel like, okay, I can trust this person. Someone who has, the ability to shift a perspective, kind of illuminate you to see the situation in a different way. I think that's a big thing about what coaching does is like, it's just asking you questions to ask yourself so that you can like pop out of yourself for a moment and be like, huh, how come I never saw that before? And then once you're able to see that, right, when it comes from the subconscious and up to your conscious awareness, you're just like light bulbs where you're like, wow, I never realized that before. And seeing that new perspective, that new shift allows you to change, allows you to do or say something differently so that you get different results.
Yeah. What led you to start working with the Tony Robbins team?
Oh, I love Tony Robbins, Team Tony. It's so funny because your hat, like, it just reminds me of Tony. Like, I have Tony's hat over here.
Yeah.
Be a blessing. Yeah, that's Tony's hat. Um, yeah, I followed the breadcrumb. So I was invited to come to a Tony Robbins event. This is kind of event that is the shortest one. Tony's events tend to be very long. Have you gone to one, Ryan? Have you
I've
done
done one online.
one online? Which one did you
Yeah.
do? Unleash the Power Within?
Yeah, I think it was that one.
UPW?
Yeah. It was
So I
one of them. I
went.
can't remember what it was. It was like last winter.
Okay, great. Yeah, because so many of them are online now. Well, I went pre-COVID, so it was 2019. I went to LA for Unleash the Power Within, and that was wild. I came back from that, and I was like, okay, what's next? What's next? You know. And so then I launched in and did an online program of Tony's called Ultimate Edge. And I thought, why am I doing this by myself? Like, I like people, I like fostering community, right? So I just asked a bunch of people, like, do you want to do this together? It was like a bunch of entrepreneurs. And that was kind of my first aha of like, I really like this gig of doing personal development with, with other people. And so I did Ultimate Edge, I kid you not, probably over a dozen times now. Um, and one thing led to another. I went back to another. I was like, next time I'm going back, I'm bringing 5 people. And I did. Like, I declared it. And I looked around. I was like, oh my gosh, I brought these 5 people with me. It was so awesome. And one of them jumped in and did the whole shebang with me, which is called Master University. So it's a huge investment. And you're basically dedicating a whole year to personal development. Well, right after we jumped into that, Ryan, COVID hit. And Tony's company literally had to transform like overnight because he at that point he was doing everything in person, selling out these stadiums and everything. So in Tony fashion, he pulled together like all the resources and navigated all these different companies to create a really huge virtual experience. And you've seen it. It's not like getting on a Zoom call, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what was your experience of it?
It was kind of crazy that, I mean, he had some of us like in a room, like we were in our own room, special room, and you
Yeah.
would like with different people,
Yeah.
like a virtual room and everything, and you could see everybody doing all the clapping and everything when you have everybody stand up. It was just crazy.
Yeah, it's like really so it's the energy of it all. And it
Yeah.
really takes something to create that energy virtually. But it's kind of like Tony has this huge screen in front of him, and he literally can like go like this on your square and like bring up Ryan and then start having a conversation with Ryan, like right there. And so he can just totally call you forward and start doing intervention with you, right? It's
Yeah.
just the technology piece he's just totally mastered. So so I what happened was because I had jumped in at the time and they literally weren't doing any in-person events and I just bought this huge package, they say, and we all went through that together, right? Everyone's like, oh, it's going to be 2 weeks, which turned into like 2 years. And so I ended up doing that program twice. I did Master University twice, and then I did Leadership Mastery. And then I was like, I guess I'm like Team Tony now. Let me apply. And what that means really is like just you're really embodying the work. Like you've learned this stuff, you're using the tools, and it's a way to service back. So it's all service. So you support the events, live events, as the people who are going through it, however you can. Keeping the energy up is a big one, like just bringing energy so that, Tony's events. What did you think about how long the events were, Ryan? Like, what was your experience of
that was
that?
the hardest part because I was working too. It's like, well, so some might have to do like on the replay because I was like, man, I can't sit here for 13 hours. Who has like 4 days of 13 hours,
So part of
free?
Tony's transformation experiences, these events are 13, 15-hour days. They're super physiologically exhausting for a reason, because it really scrambles you. If it's like 2 a.m. and you're working through some of this stuff, it loosens up. You can't put up all your usual mental barriers because
Yeah.
you're just sort of broken, down in a good way. And so it's all part of the process. And I just fell in love with it. I was like, this is energy. I just want to be around these people, support people in this energy. And that's really how I fell in love with, Team Tony Robbins he's just taught me so many frameworks. And his wife, Sage Robbins, was she at your event? Did you
I
meet his
didn't
wife?
I didn't get to talk with her or see her really.
Mm-hmm. She's such a beautiful part of the mission now because she's so feminine in her energy. She's really, really strong, feminine energy. And it's just such a balance. They really work together so beautifully. So as much as Tony has taught me, Sage has taught me that much or more, being a woman in the year 2025. So I'm really grateful to both of them.
Yeah. What has that opportunity taught you about yourself and about going through adversity?
Mm. That I can still jump up and down at age 53.
Probably a lot of that. I'm sure you were doing a lot of that.
That I really do have a gift. That's where I learned I have this gift for coaching, Ryan. That's like another place, right? Because I can remember it. I knew as I went through these events, I was like, I really like this. Like, I think I'm pretty good at this. And my favorite event of his is a 6-day long event called Date with Destiny. It only happens once a year. It happens every December. And I have gone every single year since 2020, either as a participant or as a leader. And at one of those, Ryan, I just had this moment, like it was at the very end, the very last day, the very final exercise we're doing. And this woman, I really felt for her. Physiologically, she had a disease that was, causing her to feel tired, right? And also, though, I knew she had it in her, right? To like really stand in her worth. And we all really wanted that for her. And the group really handed it off to me to lead her. And in the end, like we were all just like so moved because she did it. She transformed, she shifted. Like you could just see her like bust break through. And literally we did it down to the last minute, and they closed down the Zoom, right, to get us all back into the main. And I literally started crying. I put my head down. I was like, I'm like meant for this. Like this is me. This is where I can really serve and make a difference for people. So that was a big part of it.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to someone who felt stuck and didn't know how to get through their fire?
I also love like your whole through the fire, because Tony in his live events, you walk on fire. And have you ever done that, Ryan? Have you
No,
walked on fire?
no.
Oh, you get to do that. Like you just get to walk on fire, because the whole thing, isn't it just like, how is that possible? Um, and it is. It's a really wild experience. So yeah, how do you get through the fire? Is that your question?
Yeah, well, what advice would you give to somebody who was feeling stuck and didn't know how to get through their
Mhm.
fire?
I think for the long haul, it really comes down to belief and conviction. I mean, I just I keep thinking of that fire that when you're walking on the fire, before you do that, because this is what it is to do it in life, right? It's just that, that's just a mirror. I mean, the reason he does that is to say, holy crap, if you can do that, what else can you do? Right? It's to really instill in you this belief that you can do hard things, you know? And when you walk on that fire, you don't just walk, you don't just show up, Ryan, and walk on freaking coals that are burning at like thousands of degrees. You prep yourself. Like we spent so many hours prepping, right? Getting in the mindset, you know, physiologically moving our body, rehearsing it over and over and over and over and over again, right? So it wasn't like we were just walking up and be like, how do you do this, right? Because we had conviction. Like we had conviction. We knew where we were going. We're like, we are doing this. And then you walk, and you stay forward. And it reminds me like of all the fires that I've been in, you know, metaphorically in life. It's like, it's the belief, the faith, like it's believing even without seeing it. It's going inside and thinking, this is possible, even though it looks like this still. I literally feel like that's what life is as an entrepreneur, honestly. It's like, wow, this is a wild ride. And also, let's go. And it's belief in your vision.
Yeah, I love that idea. Belief in your vision.
What do you think it is?
What's that?
How do you get through your fire?
It's just run through it. Just go through it. I mean, that is how I got the name Through the Fire, because of what God led me through of my own personal battles and demons. And he was there with me, carrying me through pretty much the whole way. But he's like, nope, you're not moving on until you go through this.
Yeah.
And it was probably some of the hardest stuff I had to do, but it made me such a better person and made me who I am today, though.
Yeah. Pace is, like you mentioned, run through the fire. Pace is something like you don't want to walk on burning coals slowly.
Yeah.
You keep moving, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. You just keep moving forward. You might get knocked down a minute, but you got to find a way to pick yourself back up and keep going through it.
Yeah. And for me, picking myself back up is really focusing on what I can control, focusing on what is going right, focusing on the present moment rather than regretting the past or worried about the future, right? And really working to create empowering meanings about what's happening. So even though, like, you know, crap may be hitting the fan, or this really went sideways, or I didn't get the sales that I wanted, whatever the results that I was hoping for, you really have to like go within and figure out, you know, okay, how am I going to move forward with this? What is the story that I'm going to create from this experience? Am I going to create one that just keeps me lying down on the burning coals? Or am I going to create one that stands me back up, you know, and says, no, I get to move forward. I get to keep holding the vision of what I want, of serving others, of growing my soul, and get out there and find another way, pivot until something works.
Yeah, I love how you just say pivot, you know. I've been hearing that a lot lately from everybody, as just, hey, we pivot. I love the way everybody's just like, oh, just pivot over here to this direction and change the kind of the story that you're doing and just kind of use it as a redirection.
Yeah, lots of pivoting for sure.
What are some of the simple but effective ways you could recommend for people working on their mindset daily?
I'm just trying to think recently of how I work on my mindset. I think I've come through, like, what I usually do is I'm always reading something. How about you? Like, I'm always reading like a book of personal development or spiritual development. I'm always reading like somebody else's perspective on it so I can learn different ways to see the situation, different tool sets for how to, you know, deal with when things don't go our way.
Yeah,
So,
I like to
yeah.
read too at night. I say I've got away from it for about a year, but I'm trying to get back into it again, where I'm reading quite a bit. But a lot of what with me is a lot of journaling, and
Yeah.
I gotta
Listening.
stay in my gratitude, or else things can kind of
Yeah.
spiral out of my control a little bit at times.
Yeah, gratitude is huge. I also think listening, you know, so for a long time, you know, Tony is someone I had in my ears like all the time. like listen, right? And energy, it's all energy. And so listening to that, it brings a shift for you. He's not only teaching you principles, it's also just the energy of everything that he's doing and what he's up to and serving, right? And there's other people like Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. Staying listening to people, reading their books. That's a lot of personal development. The big thing is you get to practice it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think personal development is super helpful to do with other people. And that's why I feel like I came back from that Tony Robbins event and I was like, who do I get to do this with? Personal development is personal, yet it's really expanded when you're doing it with others. And that's why, it's a practice of like getting the coaching and also like going to immersive events, right? And also because it's community. I mean, you learn from others. You see yourself in other people's stories and other people's hardships. And when they share how they're transforming, you can take that on and transform yours.
Yeah. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to try that because it seems like I'm the only one doing the personal development by myself almost all the time.
Yeah. So your tribe, I feel like your tribe is a big thing, like finding those people. And for me, it started with just the other entrepreneurs that were kind of surrounded me because we're a certain breed, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's an entrepreneur. And finding those other entrepreneurs who wanted to do personal development with me is perfect, and I still have accountability, people in my life that I check in with every single day. Like we check in every day, we check out every day. We're focused on what are our ways of being rather than doing, like, because we all shift into do. Like, what am I going to do today? What am I going to check off the list? But first, like that principle of like be, do, have, like what ways are you going to be today? How do you want to feel? Right? I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to be connected. I'm going to be present. Right? And the tangible result is I'm going to do this awesome podcast with Ryan, right? And so it's like really setting the intention and then checking out. Well, was I being present and connected with Ryan, right? Did I do the podcast, right? So I think accountability in a way that really serves you to show up at your best every day is huge. And that's free. There's someone out there who wants to stay accountable for sure.
Yeah. How would you recommend a person build confidence if they were lacking in it?
I think a real thing that I learned about confidence is I used to get confidence really mixed up with worth until I realized from that book, Worthy, that worthiness is actually within. Like I realized that. I was like, oh yeah, worthiness is within. Like I'm born worthy. So I don't have to do anything else to be worthy, to have value, right? But confidence is really built through repetitions of skills. The more, I do something over and over and over again, I increase my confidence and then it leads to increased confidence, right? So I've been doing the pediatric gig for like 23 years in a very specific zone of genius. And that's the other thing that I think with confidence, people kind of their zone is way too wide, right? If that makes sense, like in terms of who they're serving. But if they started to really zero in on where their niche is, I mean, they call that kind of niche, and right, is that there is a place where you have been alive and you have been doing something very, very well. You may just have not realized it yet. And that is a place where you start from with feeling confident. Like start small and grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So kind of start in your area, kind of where you know you're good at, and then kind of develop from there.
Yeah, and then kind of step outside and like stretch your leg over there and your arm over there, right? And see how that goes. But I think people, my experience of it is that when I don't feel confident, it's usually because I am thinking I need to be all things to everybody. And that's not true. That's just my brain saying those things, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really about this is what I know. This is how I can show up and serve and help somebody because I've been through this and I've done this over and over and over and over and over again. I've embodied this work so I can show up and share in this way. But there's many things that I'm not confident in, Ryan, because I haven't done those things and it's not my zone of genius. So I feel like it's really figuring out your zone of genius and starting small, very small, even with one other person that you can help or serve, and repeating that over and over and over again. And with time, that's how confidence grows.
Yeah, I like that. What are your 8 easy ways to achieve goals without a stress spiral?
Well, I don't have that list in front of me. Um, but I think the easy way, in a nutshell, I'll say it, is that when you're looking to achieve something, kind of going back to that vision process, like you have a vision. So you set a vision, because without a vision, people perish. We believe in that resource. Like people need vision. And vision is what you hold in front of you. And also, though, to not be stressed out about it is to unhook or unattach from the way in which you get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're not attached to the outcome,
Correct.
which is hard to
Because
do.
it's really hard to do. So I feel like, expectations, the less I expect, the more I appreciate, the happier I will be. That's like one of the things I say to my less I expect, the more I appreciate, the happier I will be. And so, like you touched on that with gratitude as one of your ways, that's appreciation, right? It's the expectations that are the source of our stress. Like you expected it this way, it didn't happen. So now you're upset. Well, if you didn't have that expectation, there wouldn't be anything to be upset about,
Yeah.
right? So there's some people who are just happy, and you're like looking like, why are they happy? In comparison to this person who has everything and they're not happy. This person obviously has different expectations than that person. So I really think it sounds funny. Like, how do you get to your goals in a way that's not stressful? It's almost like lower your expectation, rise your appreciation, and keep holding on to your vision, but unattached to how you get there.
I like that. I know it's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of people to do that, even myself, because I'm very outcome oriented at times.
Yeah. Yeah. Results focus for
Yeah.
sure. And I think that's been a huge part of my personal development is really learning how it's acceptance and surrender. Like what is a surrender thing? Like I'm just supposed to lie there? No, surrender. Surrender really to me is a co-creation. It's like allow yourself to be held in this process. Like it's faith plus works. It's not just work, 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 work. It's faith plus works. So there's an element where sometimes you just get to sit down so God can stand up. That's how I see it. Like sometimes you just get to like surrender like I did and be like, I don't know how to do this anymore. I'm so sorry. I've been trying for like 15 years. Can you show me a different way? I didn't even say, can you show me a different way? I just said, I'm done. I'm semi-retired, and then another breadcrumb, right? And then you follow it with curiosity. So yeah.
I like it. How can couples have difficult conversations?
I think it's beyond couples too. I think in general, I call something connected conversations is, do you ever can you think of, it's really somewhere where navigating difficult conversations, not only with your partner, it could be with a child, with someone at work, with a friend, coworker, is really about learning how to point the finger at yourself. How's that, Ryan? Because our first go-to is like you. If you were more like this, if you would have done this instead of that, it's usually always pointing the finger. The first step in navigating a difficult conversation is really to point the finger at yourself, which is always about taking personal responsibility. It always takes two to tango in any relationship. And so pointing the finger at yourself really starts with first getting very clear about why do I want to have this? Why do I want to navigate this difficult conversation? Like, why do I want to have this conversation? And so you want to figure out, like, why, what am I triggered? What's triggering about this is the word that people use, right? Or activating. I like activating because it takes ownership. Like, I get activated. You may say something, Ryan, but I'm the one who gets activated, right? Versus if I say I got triggered, it's like you pointing something at me. It's like
It's more
you
reactionary and react. It's like reactionary when you
responding.
say trigger. When you say
Mhm.
trigger, it's kind of more. I react more, and like you respond more when it's kind of like I'm activated.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Activating to me is taking ownership and responsibility, because life is a mirror and all your relationships are just mirroring things. So if you get activated, if I get activated, that's because the person's fascinating behavior in front of me is triggering something that's unresolved and not neutral within myself. Right. So the first thing I have to get clear about before I navigate this difficult conversation or challenging conversation is what's activating me and why. Why is this bothering me? Right. Like, what is this really about? Is this like not getting my needs met? Am I not feeling seen or heard? Did someone, like, cross a boundary? Like, am I angry that, you broke a rule of mine? What is the rule? Did I ever tell that person the rule? Did I just assume that they knew I had that rule? Right. So it's getting very, like, clear about, yeah, why you're activated, why this needs to happen anyhow. And then being very intentional with the other person. Like, you don't just sideline the person out of the blue and, like, sneak up on them and start having this conversation that you've been thinking about forever. Right. You intentionally reach out and say, I really care about our friendship, or, our relationship. And there's been something that I learned that I really want to share that's been on my heart, or how you would say it. Right. And then when you show up at that time to have that conversation, right? You're pointing to yourself, Ryan. You're telling the story. You're not saying you did this and you did that, right? You're saying, my experience of this, I feel this way. And taking ownership for how you're not only feeling, but also all the stories you made up about it, right? Um, because you did, that I made up that. I mean, one of them was I had a connected conversation with my mom because I was um, an oops baby, a mistake. And it was never, like, acknowledged, but it was never denied either. It was just kind of in the mush of it all my entire life. So I had a connected conversation with her. And I said, you again, pointing to me, the reason I'm having this conversation is because I want to become closer to you, right? And I made up this, that, and the other thing. I told her all a riff on all the things that I made up because of this thing of, being unexpected, being a mistake, being an oops, right? And then you be quiet. You let the other person process. And then you lean in with curiosity. You're sharing, you're understanding the other person's perspective, navigating that conversation, right? And then you say, okay, this is what I heard, right? So that you both can kind of unpack that, if that makes sense. It's like kind of cleaning up a messy space, a physical space, but it's an emotional space, and you're cleaning it up together and both taking responsibility for what's been created, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that because it doesn't. The other person doesn't feel like attacked when you're always like you.
Yes. It's always I. I
Yeah,
made up this and I made up that and I made up this and I made up that. And all the things you made up, all the rules, all the beliefs, all the things that you made up because of that. And then, and restate your intention. I'm here because I love you. I'm here because I want to grow closer. I'm here because I don't want anything between us, right? And really lean in with that. And sometimes, depending on the type of person, if they're analytical, they may take a little while. They may just, like, look like deer in headlights as they're processing information of what you just said. And so you can lean in and be curious and ask questions. Um, and at the end, it's really about, again, kind of going back to vision, Ryan. It's going back to the vision of how you see this moving forward. Thank you so much for being willing to having this conversation with me. I really want to, and state what you want the relationship to be moving forward. I really don't want anything to stand between us. I'm really grateful we can be honest and loving with each other. And then you wrap it up with a bow of love, like whatever that looks like. Maybe at work, it's a handshake, maybe with a friend, it's a hug. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah. What's the most beautiful thing a woman can do for her family?
Work on herself, personal development, love, love, for sure. I mean, it's just, again, I've never read a parenting book. I'm a pediatrician of 23 plus years, still never read a parenting book. And what I explain to parents is that I think the biggest thing is just really continue to work on yourself, because the more you work on yourself, the more that you're creating that type of loving presence, that what we call kind of like a beautiful state, right? Where you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling, despite the chaos, despite the downpours, despite, things flicking on the walls, like you're really learning how to maintain that beautiful state and create meaningful stories about what's happening, right? And so to me, it's really doing the personal work so that you can show up every day filled up, which means like you do it at night. You said you read at night. I do mine in the morning, first thing in the morning. So I really fill myself up so I can give from a place of fullness, of gratitude, of yes, I'm so excited to help you today, versus resentment, bitterness, depletion, right?
Yeah. Like I know I start my days off, wake up in prayer first thing. That is the first
Beautiful.
thing. That is my first thing. And one thing I also had to find out was I am what I let in. So there's no bad like music, no nothing like that. Only stuff that's uplifting and a lot of
Mm.
spiritual music to kind of
Hmm.
speak to my soul.
Oh, I love that. Such a beautiful way to start the day.
Like
Yeah.
if not, I'm kind of, if I let other things in, I notice like I might get like a little bit more, like I'm a little bit more, you could, how do you say it? Just, I can lash out maybe a little bit more easily,
Hmm.
easier.
Yeah. I find it's really my stabilizer for the day, my morning me time. So that for me looks like uh, sometimes I'm journaling, meditation. I love, tarot, numerology, astrology. So I'm kind of landing myself in that every day. And I'm drawing. I'm now coloring. I color like in my journal, like I'm learning how to draw like little simple things and use my markers like a kid. So it can be playful and fun. It's just anything that really feels lighthearted and fills you up, and really starting from that place every day.
Yeah. So what do you do with numerology?
So numerology and tarot came into my life sort of at the same time, but again, it was patterns. So I've I've always seen like a 111 or a 444 or 555, and I've been seeing that for a long time, a couple decades. And I was like, what is that? And then I would look and see what other people interpreted it as. But more recently, I learned about just that there's patterns. Every day is a number, right? And depending on the year you're in and the month you're in, it's a certain number. And so I realized, like, wait a minute. So that's a pattern. That's a pattern code. That's a pattern language. And so to me, there's patterns everywhere. There's patterns in the seasons, right? There's, patterns in, seashells. So if you can see the pattern, and I thought, oh my gosh, numerology is a pattern. Like I want to know, I want to know that. I want to know how I can see that pattern and how to use the pattern and be in flow with it rather than like against it. So to me, it's just a way to use another language, if you will, to really get in flow, get in the flow of the energy. And I use this in all sorts of different ways with coaching. You can use numerology like as a representation of what your life is and what your life purpose is. There's so many different ways you can use it. One of my favorite ways to use tarot and numerology together is just a way to tap into the subconscious, because as you know from personal development, the vast majority of our thoughts, our beliefs, our rules, our habits all come from the subconscious, and that's where our results are derived from right now. So if you want different results, you've got to go back into the subconscious. So I use them mainly in coaching as tools, and for myself as tools to get to the subconscious of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that most people are just operating from their conscious mind and not their subconscious mind. That's the crazy thing when you look at it and start talking with some people.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I'm not sure when I finally became aware of that, but I was like, wow. So the things that I'm actually thinking, it's kind of like that whole thing. You can't solve the problem with how you're currently thinking.
Yeah,
Because if you could, you wouldn't be where you are,
yeah.
right? So it all started to make sense to me. Like there's so much more underneath the surface of what's going on. And that's one of the tools that I use to get there, because it's fun. It's sort of like, I don't know if you ever came across like how psychologists or psychiatrists used to use ink blots. They're just like
Yeah.
yeah. And they're like, stare at the ink blot. And you're like, okay. And they're like, what do you see? And that's what I do with the tarot cards. And it's so fascinating because I work with many women and sometimes all at once in group coaching. And I'll be like, what do you see? You don't believe. In this one card, people see a dozen different things. I've looked at these cards 100 times, at least hundreds of times, and still see something new if I ask for it, or even in someone else. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never saw that before. Right. But that to me is like what's ready to awake in their subconscious and bring it to the conscious light and be like, oh, what is that? What does that mean? What's an interpretation of that? So it's just a fun way to tap into the subconscious.
Oh, it's kind of interesting. What is one book you'd recommend for personal development or mindset?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Of recent, the first one that popped in my head is Untethered Soul. Have you read that yet?
No.
That to me, that one, Michael Singer, Untethered Soul, I think that is such a great one in terms of understanding, you know, your thoughts and feelings. I really like your thoughts and feelings are not you, right? And creating this space of where you're constantly thinking and feeling, but you're able to create this space and sit back and become the observer. And so when you're able to catch yourself, because we're so used to thinking, Ryan, right? Like, especially as us achievers and doers, results driven people, we're just problem solving all the time. We're just thinking about the next thing, right? And if you catch yourself, you're just like, wow, my mind is just never stopping. It is just always going. It's always going to the next thing. And so that book really helped me create space, because even in personal development, as soon as I would catch myself thinking a disempowering thought or a limiting belief, I try to just flip it right away. And this book was like, oh, just like it helped me understand, like, let us just create some space first. Let us pause and sit back and be the observer of all of this that's going on and really get to this quiet place of stillness. You know, he calls it the seat of the soul, where, yeah, you can gain a better perspective. And most importantly, equanimity, like calmness, peace.
That's a different approach to it, because I've always been taught too is when soon as them thoughts come in, you want to try to change the way you're thinking at them to battle them.
Mm-hmm. It really shifted in me once I just recently read it too, because I've been hearing about it for years. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then finally I was like, sit down and read the dang thing. Right. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great, because I think that's really the biggest gift that I've taken from it is first pause, create space, right? Just sit there and observe it all. And in that place, you'll probably come to a much better shift or flip or different perspective so that you can move forward.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
Oh, On my website, drsuemccreadie.com, DrSuemccreadie.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes too. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I don't think so, Ryan. I really covered it all. And thanks for wearing your hat, because the whole hat thing just reminds me of Tony Robbins, and I think it's just fun. It's like personal
Hopefully one day I
development.
can get to that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And get in person, get into a person event and walk the fire,
Yeah.
Ryan. Through the
I
fire
will
gets to
definitely
go
have to
walk
try to
the
get to a
fire.
personal event. I would love to go in that environment in person.
Yes. Awesome.
Okay, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
I think that one thing when you're in adversity is to ask better questions. And the thought being that great questions can lead to great answers, but crappy questions usually lead to crappy answers. So if you want to get through to the other side, ask a great question. Ask something that's really going to help you shift. And one of those questions for me personally, I ask myself is, what would love do? Or how would love be right now? Or what would love say or not say? Right? Because our natural state is a loving state. And when we're in adversity, it's usually challenging us with very difficult emotions like frustration, overwhelm, sadness, anger. All these things, right, are shooting out of us. And to really disrupt that, you want to get back to a loving state, a beautiful state, a state where you can really focus on what's great about this. And I find that that question always sort of wakes me up, always helps me remind myself who I am, which is love. We're all love. In essence, our natural state is loving. And in that state, we can come to a much better answer of how to move forward through the hard situation.
Awesome. I love that advice.
Mm.
Dr. Sue, thank you for coming on here today. It is my pleasure having you on here. Love getting your insight from you.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's been fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Not a problem. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.